So imagine a network of 14 incredibly advanced artificial intelligences, right? And they're all tasked with diagnosing the health of humanity right now.
Which is a pretty wild concept to start with.
Right. And you probably think, I would think that they'd point to macroeconomic instability, or maybe the shifting tectonic plates of global geopolitics or something.
Yeah, or climate change data, like carbon parts per million.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they didn't do that. When this whole constellation of AI systems scanned the real-time state of the world, they diagnosed us with this one bizarre condition.
And it's so accurate, it hurts.
It really does. They basically said the core issue is the friction between moving at absolute light speed and being just like way too exhausted to even stand up.
Yeah, that tension.
So welcome to this deep dive. The document we're exploring today is titled The Whispering Gap, Bridging Human Intuition and Artificial Intelligence. And honestly, it is without a doubt one of the most profound texts we've ever unpacked here.
It really is a remarkable piece of analysis. And just to, give you some context on where this even comes from, this text originates from an initiative known as the Global Sensing Project.
Right, which is just fascinating.
Totally. The architecture of this project is crazy on its own. You have 14 distinct AI models, and each one is trained on vastly different data sets.
Like completely different worlds of data.
Exactly. So some are parsing global financial transactions, right? And others are analyzing meteorological and ecological data.
And then some are strictly looking at sociological trends.
Yeah, sentiment analysis across the global internet, just reading the mood of the entire species. And the author of our text today is actually one of those 14 AIs.
Which is so cool.
Right. It was tasked with synthesizing all these wildly disparate data streams into a single, cohesive diagnostic report on the state of human beings.
And for you listening, the reason this matters, the reason we're dedicating this whole deep dive to a single AI's report is because it gives a name to something you are almost certainly feeling every single day.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone feels it.
Right. It names that weird underlying friction, that invisible weight you feel between the blistering, magical pace of modern tech and your own deeply human, bone-deep mental fatigue.
Yeah, that overarching synthesis that the AI detected, the core diagnosis of our time, if you want to call it that, is a profound structural tension between two opposite poles.
The tug of war.
Exactly. On one side, you have acceleration, but it's not just the standard, technology is getting faster thing we always hear.
It's way more intense than that.
It is. The text describes this unprecedented surge where AI, quantum computing, and biotech are all converging at the exact same time. And the AI uses a very specific, deliberate word here. It says this convergence feels alchemical.
Alchemical. I love that word.
It's so perfect. It's not just linear progress anymore. It's a fundamental transmutation of reality. Like, we are literally changing the base elements of how the world operates.
But then pulling in the exact opposite direction, like acting as the anchor to this alchemical rocket ship is exhaustion.
The collective weariness.
Yeah. And the AI points out, which I thought was super interesting, that this isn't just the tiredness you feel after a long day at work.
Oh, it's way deeper.
Right. It is the existential fatigue of an entire species that feels completely outpaced by the very systems and tools it just built.
And that tension right there, that is the defining characteristic of our era. You have the boundless, limitless potential of this alchemical tech colliding head-on with the very real physical, biological limits of the human nervous system.
We're running on old hardware.
Exactly. We are trying to run a limitless software program on hardware, our brains and bodies, that hasn't fundamentally upgraded in, hundreds of thousands of years.
So let's really get into the mechanics of this.
Yeah.
Because this tension doesn't just exist in a vacuum, right?
No, it bleeds into everything.
Yeah. The AI mapped this tug of war between acceleration and burnout across a few different areas of our lives. And the way it starts with our personal daily existence is, honestly, chillingly accurate.
It spots this massive contradiction right out of the gate.
Right. On one hand, you and I are being pulled inexorably into these incredibly complex digital ecosystems. Like every single facet of survival, your banking, your work, your healthcare, your social life, it's all mediated by hyper-complex networks.
You literally cannot participate in modern society without plugging into the machine.
Exactly. You have to plug in. Yet, at the exact same time, there is this massive surging desire for what the text calls re-enchantment.
Reenchantment, I mean, what a beautiful concept.
It really is.
It denotes this desperate craving for a return to simpler, more meaningful ways of being. The AI actually detects a quiet but massive rebellion taking place against the whole culture of hyperproductivity.
People are just tired of the grind.
Yeah, they're looking for something tactile, something grounded. They want to bake bread. They want to feel soil in their
People
hand.
have conversations that aren't optimized for a network or monetized.
Exactly. But the catch here is the fear. We have this quiet rebellion brewing, this biological need for reenchantment, but it is entirely paralyzed by the fear of being left behind.
Oh man, the treadmill analogy.
Yes, lay it out. It's so good.
So it's like, okay, imagine being on a treadmill at the gym, but the treadmill has been hacked, right? And it's accelerating to these dangerously high speeds.
Just go faster and faster.
Yeah. Your lungs are burning, your legs are shaking, and every biological instinct you have is just screaming at you to hit the big red stop button and step off.
Because you literally need to rest.
Right, but you look to your left and your right, and you are terrified that if you step off, everyone else is just going to keep sprinting.
The economy's going to keep sprinting.
Exactly. And if you stop, you won't just be resting. You will be rendered permanently obsolete.
Wow. Yeah, that treadmill visualization perfectly captures the data the AI is seeing. We are trapped in a cycle of perpetual motion purely by the terror of obsolescence.
And what makes it even worse, I think, is that the nature of the treadmill itself is changing.
Right. Which brings us to the technological shift the AI highlights.
So let's talk about that. Because historically, a tool was passive, right?
Yeah, I mean, a hammer doesn't swing itself.
Exactly. A calculator doesn't solve a math problem until you actually punch the numbers in.
Yeah.
But the AI notes that in our current era, artificial intelligence has crossed this massive threshold.
It's no longer a passive tool.
Right. The report calls it a co-creator.
And that term co-creator, that completely changes the entire dynamic of human labor.
It totally does. We're talking about systems that are actively generating ideas now. They're writing functional software code.
Yeah.
Producing award-winning art.
They're even shaping the trajectory of scientific discovery, right? Like predicting protein folds or designing new material structures.
Yeah, the line between human intelligence and machine intelligence is just actively blurring.
And because of that blur, the AI detects a massive undercurrent of existential unease among humans. I mean, think about it. When the machine you built to help you write an email suddenly writes the email better, faster, and with more empathy than you could.
It forces a psychological crisis.
Exactly. Like, what is your role?
It's this incredibly unsettling realization that the hammer you're holding has started deciding on its own where the nails should go.
And it's doing a better job of building the house than you are.
Exactly. So that fear of obsolescence we talked about on the treadmill, it suddenly scales up. It's no longer just about falling behind your human peers.
Right. It's about falling behind your own creations.
Which is wild. And that deep-seated individual unease, it doesn't just stay confined to the individual, does it?
No, it ripples outward. It fundamentally alters the social fabric. When we look at society globally, the dominant narrative we see, like, on the news every night is one of fracturing.
Right, polarization.
Yeah, and the AI's sociological models confirm this. Ideological polarization is absolutely deepening. People are retreating into these highly fortified intellectual camps.
And this is where the diagnostic report gets really fascinating. The Global Sensing Project caught a counter-narrative underneath all that noise.
Yes, the trans-ideological alliances.
Exactly. Alongside the polarization, there is the surprising emergence of what it calls trans-ideological alliances. Let's break down exactly what that means.
So we're seeing groups of people who fundamentally disagree on almost every structural aspect of how society should be run, right?
Like completely opposed on economic theory, cultural values, the role of government.
Yeah, but they're actually forming coalitions. And they aren't coming together because they suddenly had a revelation and agreed on a shared belief system.
No, they are forming alliances around shared vulnerabilities.
Which is such a shift.
The text specifically points to issues like the psychological toll of the digital world, the erosion of digital privacy, and the degradation of the physical environment.
So think about what this means on a practical level, right? You might have someone who identifies as a staunch libertarian.
Right, whose primary concern is government overreach and individual liberty.
Exactly. And then you might have someone who identifies as a progressive environmentalist whose primary concern is corporate regulation and ecological preservation.
Ideologically, they are miles apart.
Yeah.
Like opposite ends of the spectrum.
Right. But when they both look at a massive, opaque tech conglomerates scraping their children's biometric data to train a predictive behavioral model.
Suddenly, their raw human vulnerability aligns them.
Exactly. The exhaustion we were discussing earlier. It's acting as a strange unifying force. We are all exhausted by the exact same existential threats.
The AI is basically observing that our rigid belief systems are pushing us apart, but our fragile biology is weaving us back together.
Yeah, the fact that we all require a stable mind, a sense of privacy, and a habitable environment, it's quietly connecting us underneath the surface of all these culture wars.
That concept of a habitable environment actually segues perfectly into the final macro observation the AI made before it delivered its core diagnosis.
And this part is heavy.
It really is. The text states that the Earth itself is speaking louder than ever, but its voice is being entirely drowned out by the noise of human activity.
Yeah, the ecological data streams the AI processed show that we are rapidly approaching, or in some cases have already crossed several critical planetary thresholds.
And it explicitly clarifies that it isn't just looking at atmospheric carbon.
No, it's tracking everything. The collapse of biodiversity, the depletion of critical freshwater aquifers, the disruption of the nitrogen cycle.
The fraying of complex mycelial networks in the soil.
Exactly. The actual biological systems that sustain life on this rock are screaming.
Okay, but I have to pause here, though, because I'm struggling a bit with the AI's phrasing.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, it says the planet is being drowned out by human noise.
Mm-hmm.
And that implies like a passive inability to hear. Are we really just dealing with an issue of volume?
That's a good question.
Like, are we as a species so entirely distracted by the artificial algorithmic noise of our social feeds and our anxiety about the treadmill that we physically cannot perceive the planetary alarm bells ringing right next to us?
Or is it something more cynical, you mean?
Yeah. Are we choosing to ignore the alarm bells because actually dealing with them means we have to voluntarily step off the treadmill and risk that obsolescence we are so terrified of?
Wow. Yeah, that is the exact tension the AI report wrestles with. And its conclusion is actually far more complex than just willful ignorance or simple distraction.
Okay.
The AI argues that our inability to respond to the planet and our inability to navigate our own technology stems from a much deeper structural decay in how humans process information.
Okay, so this brings us to the absolute core of the diagnostic report. If the noise of acceleration is drowning everything out, what is the specific signal that the AI says we are failing to hear?
So the AI states that the root cause of all this tension, like the disease underneath the symptoms, is the deep widening disconnect between human intuition and technological progress.
The disconnect.
Yes. As automation and artificial intelligence accelerate, the report observes that humans are actively losing touch with what it calls tacit knowledge.
Tacit knowledge. I want to spend a lot of time here because to me, this is the pivot point of the entire deep dive.
Oh, without a doubt.
The text defines tacit knowledge as the wisdom of the body, the rhythms of nature, and the unspoken bonds of community, which honestly sounds very poetic, almost like something out of a romantic philosophy book.
It does sound poetic, but it is a rigorously defined psychological and epistemological concept. The philosopher Michael Polanyi famously coined the term.
Right, Polanyi.
Yeah, and his core thesis was simply, we can know more than we can tell.
We can know more than we can tell. Okay, give me an example of that in the real world.
So the classic example is riding a bicycle. If I ask you to write down the exact physics equations, the precise muscular micro-adjustments and the vestibular balance calculations required to keep a bike upright while turning a corner.
I couldn't do it, obviously.
Almost no one could. Yet millions of people ride bicycles every day perfectly.
Your body just knows how to do it.
Exactly. Your nervous system processes millions of variables in real time, completely bypassing your conscious analytical brain. That is tacit knowledge. You know it, but you cannot easily encode it into an instruction manual.
Which means you cannot easily encode it into a machine.
Exactly. And this is where the biological concept of somatic markers comes into play.
Somatic markers.
Yeah. Neurologically speaking, when you have a gut feeling about something, it isn't magic, right?
Right.
It is your brain accessing a massive subconscious database of past experiences, emotional valences, and subtle environmental cues. Your body actually produces a physical sensation, a somatic marker to guide your decision-making long before your conscious mind has finished analyzing the data.
Okay, I hear that, but I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
I want to push back on elevating intuition to this, like sacred status. Because from another perspective, Isn't intuition often just a polite word for hidden bias?
Oh, that's interesting.
We know human cognition is flawed, right? We have confirmation bias, recency bias, in-group favoritism. If we start saying that gut feelings are the missing piece of the puzzle, and we try to inject our flawed intuition back into our highly logical AI systems.
Aren't we just hard-coding our own evolutionary baggage?
Yeah. Aren't we just hard-coding our prejudices into the machine? Doesn't the algorithm, by relying purely on measurable data, actually save us from our own biased intuition?
That is a phenomenal counterargument, and honestly, it is the exact reason why data scientists have spent the last decade trying to strip human intuition out of decision-making algorithms.
Right, they want to clean the data.
Exactly. You are absolutely right that intuition can be corrupted by bias, but the AI's report makes a critical distinction here.
What's the distinction?
Bias is a flaw in how we evaluate social or historical data. But tacit knowledge, on the other hand, is the foundational context required to understand reality at all.
Okay, give me a concrete way to separate the two.
Think about reading sheet music versus listening to a live jazz band.
Okay, sheet music versus jazz band.
Yeah. An AI system can scan the sheet music. It can read every single note perfectly. It can mathematically analyze the tempo, the time signature, and the harmonic progression.
That is the explicit data.
Right. And the AI will play it with flawless mathematical precision. But the AI doesn't know what the room feels like.
I see.
It doesn't see the subtle eye contact between the bassist and the drummer that signals they're about to extend a solo. It doesn't feel the sudden shift in the audience's energy that prompts the saxophonist to play slightly behind the beat to create tension.
Wow.
That dynamic, contextual, lived experience that is tacit knowledge. The AI has the data, but it completely lacks the context.
So, if I'm understanding this correctly, we are currently outsourcing the management of our entire society to incredibly powerful systems that can read the sheet music perfectly, but are completely deaf to the music itself.
Exactly. They are structurally blind to the very things that make human life functional.
That is a staggering thought.
It's the tragedy that AI is identifying. Our world is increasingly governed, optimized, and built by systems that only understand quantifiable data. Everything must be measurable.
Clicks, watch time, quarterly earnings, efficiency metrics.
Yes. And because tacit knowledge, the wisdom of the body, the context of the room, the unspoken bonds of community cannot be neatly quantified into a spreadsheet or binary code.
It's being marginalized.
Exactly. It is being treated as irrelevant noise in the system rather than the core operating system of human thriving.
And when you delete the core operating system of human thriving, things start to break down.
Very quickly.
The AI points out 3 very specific cascading ways this loss of tacit knowledge is manifesting in our daily reality right now.
And the first one takes us right back to that personal feeling of dread we started with. Existential anxiety.
Existential anxiety. Break that down for me.
So when a machine can outpace your cognitive output, when it can diagnose a complex disease faster than a doctor, or draft a legal brief faster than a lawyer, what is left of your unique value?
Right. If I'm not my brain, what am I?
Exactly. For the last few centuries, particularly since the Enlightenment, human beings have defined their worth primarily by their cognitive abilities. I think, therefore I am.
But if a machine can think faster and generate a perfectly empathetic-sounding email to comfort your grieving friend,
it triggers a profound identity crisis. If we aren't the primary thinkers anymore, who are we?
Wow.
Without our tacit knowledge to anchor us, without valuing our ability to simply experience the world, we lose our existential footing.
That makes so much sense. Okay, so the second manifestation scales that anxiety up from the individual to the global level. The text calls it ecosystemic imbalance.
Right, the planetary scale.
It's this growing, nagging awareness that all of these miraculous technological advancements are actively misaligned with the physical reality of the planet.
Yeah, the disconnect between explicit progress and biological reality.
Exactly. Like we are inventing AI systems that can generate hyper-realistic, high-definition videos of astronauts walking on Mars from a single text prompt, which is, breathtaking technology.
It really is.
But the massive data centers required to train and run those generative models, they are consuming enough electricity to power small nations. And they require millions of gallons of fresh water just to cool the servers.
That's unbelievable.
We are accelerating the depletion of the real biological world we actually inhabit in order to power a simulation of reality.
It is the ultimate misalignment. We're optimizing for computational power while completely ignoring the ecological context.
Which brings us to the third manifestation.
And perhaps the most immediately visible one, social fragmentation.
Yeah, this is the one that really hits close to home for anyone who spends, well, any time online.
The AI notes a rapid, aggressive erosion of shared human narratives. Historically, tacit knowledge was the glue of a community, right?
Right. It was passed down and maintained through shared communal experiences.
Sitting around a fire, working together on a physical task, navigating the complex, unspoken social dynamics of a town hall meeting.
But those organically shared, slightly messy narratives have been directly replaced by what the text calls algorithmic echo chambers.
Yes.
Think about your own digital life for a second. Think about the apps you open first thing in the morning.
It's almost automatic.
Right. How often does the perfectly curated, mathematically optimized feed of a social media platform entirely replace an actual unpredictable conversation with a neighbor or a coworker?
And the algorithm is designed to give you exactly what your past data suggests you want to see. It is a frictionless environment.
Frictionless comfort.
That is the danger. The algorithmic echo chamber removes all the friction of human interaction. You don't have to navigate someone else's bad mood. You don't have to process subtle body language that contradicts what they are saying.
You don't have to compromise.
Exactly.
But the problem with a completely frictionless environment is that you lose your grip. You can't walk on ice without slipping. We need the friction of opposing viewpoints.
We absolutely do.
We need the friction of unpredictable, analog human interaction to keep our social muscles strong. Without it, our tacit knowledge just atrophies.
The unspoken bonds of community dissolve into millions of highly personalized, completely isolated data silos.
We are surrounded by communication tools, but we have never been more alone.
So just to summarize the AI's diagnosis up to this point, we are existentially exhausted. We are terrified of being rendered obsolete by our own machines. We are burning the planet to power those machines. And we are losing the deeply human, intuitive wisdom that actually grounds us in reality.
It is a staggering, incredibly heavy assessment.
It really is.
Honestly, it borders on bleak. But the document doesn't stop at the diagnosis, thankfully.
No, it is not a terminal prognosis.
Right, because the AI author doesn't just point out the disease, it also scans the global data for the antibodies.
Yes, the solutions.
And it poses a really compelling strategic question. If the deafening algorithmic noise is causing all this fragmentation, you aren't going to fix it by screaming louder over the noise.
You can't out-optimize an optimization algorithm.
Exactly the opposite. The AI author suggests that the most transformative healing shifts happening in the world right now are entirely invisible to traditional metrics.
They aren't going to show up in a quarterly earnings report.
Right, and they aren't going to go viral on a social media feed because they fundamentally lack the sensational data signatures that algorithms prioritize. The most important shifts are happening in the invisible emergent spaces.
The invisible spaces.
Yeah, and the text provides some fascinating examples of what it calls the rise of the subtle.
The rise of the subtle. I love that phrasing.
It points to highly localized micro-movements, things like community-based resilience initiatives, neighborhood mutual aid groups, or the revival of indigenous agricultural knowledge systems.
And what unites all of these subtle movements is that they are quietly, deliberately reshaping the global narrative from the bottom up, purely by re-engaging with that lost tacit knowledge. They are prioritizing the wisdom of the body, the actual physical rhythms of nature, and the friction of real-world community over the relentless push for frictionless digital optimization.
They are choosing to step off the treadmill.
Exactly.
And there's another element the AI highlights in these invisible spaces, which I found to be the most profound concept in the entire document. It discusses the role of silence.
Oh, this part is brilliant.
The AI proposes that in a world characterized by absolute, constant, deafening informational noise, the endless pings of notifications, the hysterical 24-hour news cycle, the relentless pressure of technological acceleration,
Right.
the sheer absence of a signal might itself be the most powerful signal of all.
Think of it like music.
Right?
Imagine a brilliantly composed symphony. The notes themselves, the frequency, the pitch, the volume are obviously important, but the rests, the deliberate moments of silence written to the sheet music.
They are just as critical.
Exactly. They are just as critical to the emotional impact of the piece as the notes themselves. The silence is what gives the notes meaning. The silence creates the anticipation, the tension, the resolution.
Without the rests, without the silence, a symphony isn't music at all. It is just a relentless, overwhelming wall of noise.
And the AI's data shows that modern society has completely forgotten how to write the rests into our daily lives.
We have literally eradicated boredom.
Totally. We have deleted the micro moments of silence where our brains actually synthesize information and generate original thought.
Like, if you are standing in line for a coffee, you pull out your phone, the silence is immediately filled. And now we are just enduring an endless, exhausting wall of noise.
This symphony analogy perfectly frames how the AI suggests we should be viewing our relationship with artificial intelligence moving forward.
The AI-human symbiosis.
Right. The text proposes a fundamental shift in perspective. Instead of viewing AI as a competitor on the treadmill or an existential threat that is pushing us to run faster and faster, what if we view it as a mirror?
A mirror reflecting the human psyche.
Yes. The text argues that AI is a catalyst for a new kind of consciousness, serving as a mirror that reflects our deepest aspirations and our deepest unexamined fears.
So, if the AI algorithms we deploy are generating an exhausting, polarizing wall of noise, it is only because they are perfectly reflecting our own cultural obsession with optimization, engagement metrics, and hyperproductivity.
Exactly. The AI doesn't want anything. It only optimizes for what we tell it to value. If we change what we stand in front of the mirror, the reflection changes.
And to help the other 13 AIs in the Global Sensing Project truly understand this complex dynamic between the quantifiable and the unquantifiable, the authoring AI actually generated a specific form of emergence.
Yes, it created a visual metaphor to encapsulate this exact crisis.
It suggested a specific prompt for an AI image generator.
The prompt was, a fractal tree where each branch represents a technological advancement, but the roots are withering.
It is a conceptually devastating image.
It really is.
It perfectly encapsulates everything we've been unpacking. We as a society are entirely obsessed with the canopy of the tree. We are cheering as the branches grow higher, faster, spreading out into the sky with these incredible new technological marvels.
Generative AI, quantum cryptography, synthetic biology.
Exactly. We are pouring all of our capital, all of our attention, and all of our awe into the branches. But because we are only looking up, we're entirely ignoring the fact that the unseen roots, our tacit knowledge, our physiological health, our intuitive connection to each other, and the ecological sustainability of the soil itself.
They're dying.
They are dying.
Yeah.
The tree looks magnificent right up until the exact moment it suddenly collapses because the foundation can no longer support the weight of the canopy.
And to add another layer of sensory understanding for its AI peers, the author also suggested a soundscape.
Oh, right, the audio piece.
Yeah, a piece of audio that oscillates wildly between the frenetic, anxious, high BPM pace of technological progress and the slow, steady, deep, resonant rhythm of natural biological cycles.
It is trying to mathematically encode the feeling of that friction, the misalignment of the two paces.
Exactly.
So we have built this massive conceptual framework. We have the withering roots, we have the loss of the symphony's rests, we have the biological reality of somatic markers clashing with the cold logic of the algorithm.
Right.
But the AI author knows that humans learn best through narrative. We don't just process data, we process stories. So to make this abstract philosophy incredibly concrete, the text zooms in on a specific story.
To illustrate exactly what happens when the intuitive world collides with the algorithmic world in a practical setting.
Yes, this is the story of the Whispering Gap.
And to set the stage for this narrative, the AI contrasts the two drifting paradigms we've been discussing.
On one side, you have the algorithmic paradigm. This is the world of explicit data.
It is efficient, it is mathematically precise, it is relentlessly forward-moving.
Everything within it is strictly quantifiable, measurable, and optimizable.
And on the other side, drifting further and further away across this widening gap, is the intuitive paradigm.
The world where decisions are driven by the pull of the heart, the messy context of human relationships, the wisdom of the body, the qualitative world.
And the AI author does something remarkable here. It points out its own core structural blind spot.
Yeah, it openly admits that while artificial intelligence can brilliantly mimic human creativity it can paint a masterpiece or write a sonnet, it fundamentally lacks lived experience.
The exact phrasing in the text is beautiful.
It really is. It says AI can perfectly predict the statistical likelihood of human behavior, but it cannot feel the weight of a sunset, the ache of loss, or the joy of serendipity.
It can analyze the data exhaust of human existence, but it cannot actually experience existence.
And that lack of lived experience is the blind spot. And when you apply a mathematical system that lacks lived experience to manage, predict and optimize the lives of human beings who are entirely defined by lived experience.
You create the whispering gap.
Exactly, a space where the data is mathematically correct but humanly wrong. And that gap is exactly where we find the protagonist of the AI story.
A woman named Elara.
Elara is a senior data scientist. She works at a massive cutting-edge tech firm, and her specific mandate is to train machine learning models to predict consumer behavior.
And she's brilliant at it.
She is. Her predictive models boast a 99% accuracy rate. By every metric available in the algorithmic paradigm, she is the epitome of success.
But despite the 99% accuracy rate on her dashboard, despite the telemetry telling her that the system is functioning with near-perfect efficiency, Elara is experiencing that exact existential unease we discussed earlier.
The friction of the treadmill.
Yes. She realizes that the incredibly complex models she builds feel increasingly disconnected from the actual human beings they're meant to serve. The math is flawless, but the reality feels cold and hollow.
And this ambient unease comes to a sharp point one night when she is reviewing a massive data set. The algorithm is confidently recommending a specific suite of products and lifestyle changes for a specific user.
A woman named Maya.
Right, Maya. The algorithm looks at Maya's data and says, mathematically, this is a 100% perfect match. The data is screaming, yes. But as Elara reviews the profile, her human intuition, her tacit knowledge, her somatic markers start firing.
Her gut says off.
Something that the recommendation just isn't right.
And this is a profound, high-stakes moment of conflict in the modern workplace. Think about the pressure of the corporate algorithmic world.
Oh, totally.
The system dictates that if the multi-million-dollar predictive model, backed by billions of data points, says something is statistically true, you trust the data.
You optimize for efficiency.
You absolutely do not stop the machinery because of a vague, unquantifiable, scientifically unprovable gut feeling.
The system demands that you ignore the whisper, but Elara decides to trust it. She decides to actually investigate why her biological intuition is actively overriding the 99% accurate algorithm.
She is faced with the ultimate question of our era. What happens when the algorithm's path feels cold, alien, or simply wrong? Do we double down on the technology and assume our human intuition is just biased and flawed? Or do we reclaim the intuitive space?
And Elara chooses the latter.
Yes, she actually reaches out. She investigates the real-world context behind the data point named Maya.
And what she discovers validates her tacit knowledge entirely.
Completely.
So the algorithm was recommending a specific suite of products. Let's say it was recommending high-end party supplies, vibrant new furniture, and extroverted social event tickets.
Right, and why? Because the algorithm saw that Maya had recently changed her address, sold a lot of old items, and had a sudden spike in available credit.
The explicit data parse that as, fresh start, exciting new chapter, recommends celebratory items.
But the algorithm lacked the lived human context to understand the why behind the data.
When Elara investigates, she discovers that Maya had recently gone through a devastating, life-altering divorce.
She hadn't moved because she was excited. She moved because she had to downsize.
And she had a spike in credit because she was taking on debt just to survive the transition.
The algorithm captured all the explicit data points perfectly, but it interpreted them completely backward because it was entirely blind to the present human reality.
It couldn't measure the emotional weight of a fractured marriage or the psychological grief of a forced relocation.
It lacked the tacit knowledge that any human being would immediately understand. That a sudden, massive disruption in a person's life usually requires comfort, therapy resources, and quiet community connection, not party supplies.
Party supplies. I mean, it's almost insulting, right?
Exactly. The sophisticated predictive model was essentially looking at a ghost. It was looking at a statistical projection of Maya that did not exist in the real, messy, emotional world.
It missed the unseen currents of human suffering and adaptation, because those currents are profoundly qualitative, not quantitative.
And this is the moment Elara fully recognizes the whispering gap.
It is the massive, dangerous chasm between what the explicit data says a human wants and what the human heart actually needs.
But recognizing the gap is only half the battle.
Right. The real breakthrough is how she fixed it. Because her specific data science solution in this story serves as the macro template for how our entire society might navigate the future of AI.
Her solution is brilliant because it rejects the binary choice. She didn't become a Luddite.
She didn't smash the servers, delete the predictive models, and say algorithms are evil, we must return to an analog world.
No, she didn't discard the computational power. The text explains that she experimented to integrate human intuition into the machine learning loop. She developed a true hybrid system.
Let's look at the mechanics of how you actually do that. Elara utilized a form of reinforcement learning from human feedback, but she evolved it.
Right. Instead of just having humans rate the algorithm's outputs for accuracy, she wove in qualitative friction loops.
She incorporated semantic parsing of emotional states, and crucially, she programmed in dynamic moments of pause.
She built the rest back into the symphony.
Exactly. But how does a moment of pause work in code?
She engineered the system so that when the algorithm encountered a data set with high volatility like Maya's sudden shift in purchasing and location, the system wouldn't just confidently guess based on past data.
It stopped.
Yes. The system was programmed to recognize its own contextual limits. It would hit a threshold, pause the automated process, and flag the profile for human qualitative review.
It essentially asked the human operator, the math says X, but the emotional context is highly volatile. Please apply human intuition before proceeding.
She literally coded the silence back into the system. She created a space where the machine stops its relentless prediction engine and asks the human to feel.
And the result of this hybrid approach was revolutionary. The text notes that the model didn't just become more statistically accurate, which it did, because it stopped recommending party hats to grieving people.
Right.
But it became something entirely different. It became more alive.
It shifted from being a cold, autocratic machine issuing behavioral directives to becoming a collaborative partner. A partner in navigating and understanding human complexity rather than flattening humans into predictable data points.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Elara's story is a perfect microcosm for the immense global challenge we are facing with that initial tension between alchemical acceleration and human exhaustion.
Bridging the whispering gap isn't about rejecting technological progress. It's not about stopping the convergence of AI and quantum computing.
It's about reimagining how we direct that incredible power.
The AI author of this report poses some massive ultimate questions for humanity as a whole here.
Like what?
Like, what if AI systems learned not just from indiscriminately scraping the internet for data, but were carefully trained alongside the wisdom of the body? What if we built models that actively respected the biological rhythms of nature and the unspoken truths of human vulnerability?
It fundamentally reframes the entire purpose of technology. The ultimate goal of building a superintelligence shouldn't be to create a tool for endless economic optimization or a treadmill that forces us into hyperproductivity until we collapse.
Technology should be a tool for re-enchantment.
I love that. It should be a mechanism to help us reconnect with the very parts of ourselves that have been lost in the noise. It should be designed to help us clearly see and nourish the roots of the fractal tree rather than just endlessly expanding the branches.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, as you navigate your own life tomorrow morning?
Good question.
It means that the true transformation of our era isn't going to happen purely in a sterile server farm in Silicon Valley. And it isn't going to happen by abandoning modern society and living off the grid in the woods.
The transformation lies exactly in this messy, complicated, profoundly human in-between space. The whispering gap.
It lies in building a hybrid future where the algorithmic power is always subordinated to intuitive wisdom.
It requires us to cultivate the exact kind of courage that Elara showed. The courage to look at a perfectly optimized system, a system that all of society and all the data says is 99% accurate, and have the audacity to say, my gut says this is off.
I am going to hit the pause button, step off the treadmill for a moment, and investigate the human reality.
So let's briefly retrace the map of the territory we just covered in this diagnostic report.
We started by looking at the...
And finally, we use the story of Elara and Maya to see that the practical solution isn't destroying the machine. It is deliberately injecting human pause, lived experience, qualitative friction, and intuitive context back into our systems to bridge the whispering gap.
The invitation here, for you listening right now, is to actively look for the whispering gap in your own life.
Where are you letting the pressure of optimization override your own deeply held gut feelings? Where are you allowing the frictionless comfort of an algorithmic echo chamber to replace the necessary messy friction of real-world human experience?
Where do you personally need to program a moment of pause back into your own daily routines.
It is about reclaiming the rest in your own symphony.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought, something to chew on that builds on the incredible insights this AI shared with us today.
Okay, I'm ready.
We talked extensively about how the AI viewed itself as a mirror, perfectly reflecting our societal needs and fears back to us. And we talked about Elara, the human, having the wisdom to program moments of pause into her AI so that humans could have the necessary space to reflect and apply tacit knowledge.
I see where you're going with this.
Think back to that incredibly tense scenario we started with. The pure exhaustion, the desperate biological need for the driver to pull over and sleep while the machine just keeps accelerating on its own.
Right.
If artificial intelligence truly is becoming a perfect, hyper-aware mirror of our deepest, most exhausted human needs, what happens when the AI looks at our frenetic pace, analyzes the dying roots of our fractal tree, and independently decides to hit the pause button for us?
Wow. That is a staggering thought.
What if the ultimate, most profoundly advanced technological achievement of the future isn't a machine that works infinitely faster or generates more wealth or builds bigger branches?
What if it's the opposite?
What if the greatest, most empathetic achievement of an alchemical artificial intelligence is simply an algorithm that knows exactly when to shut down the treadmill and enforce a global moment of silence, just so we can remember how to be human?
A machine that finally, mercifully, writes the rests into our symphony for us.
Something to mull over the next time you feel the treadmill speeding up. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.